Montana Territory, August 1882. The sun was high and cruel over the dry hills when they tied her to the hitching post. Silvie Mae Morgan's wrists burned against the course rope, her fingers bloodless and stiff. The post stood outside the family's barn near Dry Creek, where the wind kicked up dust like it had a grudge. Her brothers had done it, Walt and Irwin, both red-faced from whiskey and fury. They said she had shamed the family. They said she would stay tied until she agreed to marry the man they picked. The man was 43, owned a pig farm, and spat when he talked. Sylvie's father stood behind them but said nothing. His silence stung worse than the rope. "You think you're better than us," Irwin had shouted. "Running off to teach school, talking like we're beneath you. You'll marry who we say." Then they left her there, roped like livestock, the barn wall at her back and the heat pressing down. She could hear the horses stomping in the shadowed stalls, smell the hay starting to sour. Flies buzzed around her face, drawn to the sweat running down her neck. Her jaw clenched, but she swallowed her tears. She had not cried when her mother died, and she would not cry now. The sound of hoofbeats came late in the afternoon, slow and steady down the rutted road. She lifted her head. A lone rider approached, dust curling around the legs of his chestnut gelding. He wore a battered hat pulled low, and his shirt was rolled to his elbows, arms browned from sun. The horse slowed as he came into the yard, hooves crunching gravel. He reined in, then paused. His gaze landed on her. She expected him to keep riding like most did. Instead, he dismounted. He was tall, lean, and moved like he was built for the land quiet and sure. As he stepped closer, she saw the wear of travel on him, the dust on his boots, the faint scar on his cheek. "You all right?" His voice was low, steady. She lifted her chin. "Do I look all right?" He looked at the rope around her wrists, then back at her face. "No, you do not." He stepped forward. She tensed. He did not pull a knife. Instead, he used his hands, strong, careful fingers working the knot. "Who did this?" he asked. "My brothers," she said. He nodded once and said nothing more, just kept working. The rope fell away. Her arms dropped, numb and useless. She staggered, and he caught her. "Easy," he said. He smelled like horse and pine. His shirt was damp with sweat. She leaned against him for one heartbeat, just one, then pushed away. "I did not ask for help," she said. "No, ma'am," he said. "But you needed it." She rubbed her wrists. "Who are you?" "Beau Bridger," he said. "Was passing through, headed to Helena for supplies." She looked toward the road. "Well, Beau Bridger, you should keep going." "Not until I know you are safe." She laughed once, bitter. "There is no safe here," he studied her. "Got any place else to go?" Sylvie hesitated. "No," he nodded again. "You got a horse?" "No." "Then you are riding with me. I am not leaving with a stranger." "I just untied you from a post, miss. I think I earned something." She looked at him, really looked. He had steady eyes, dark and calm, a man used to storms. "My name is Sylvie," she said finally. "Silvie Mae Morgan." He tipped his hat. "Pleasure, Miss Morgan." She glanced toward the house. The windows were dark. No one stirred. "If I leave," she said, "they will never let me come back." "Seems to me," Beau said, "they already made that choice." He held out his hand. She looked at it. Then she took it. He helped her up on his horse, then swung up behind her. His arm circled her waist, firm but respectful. She stared ahead as he turned the horse toward the road. The sun was dipping low now, streaking the sky gold. They rode west. The wind cooled her skin. Her wrist still ached, but her chest felt lighter. They stopped near dusk, made camp beside a creek with cottonwoods rustling above. He built a fire. She sat across from him, knees pulled up, watching sparks rise. He passed her a tin of beans. "Eat. You need strength." She ate in silence, then set the tin down. "Why did you help me?" He looked at the fire. "Because someone should have." She said nothing at first. "Then you really headed to Helena?" "I was. Now I am not so sure." She met his eyes across the fire. "What are you sure of? That you deserve better than a hitching post." She felt something shift inside her, like a door cracking open. Later, he laid his bedroll near the fire and turned his back to give her space. She lay awake, staring at stars. Her wrists throbbed, but her chest did not. Not anymore. In the morning, he handed her a tin cup of coffee. She took it, their fingers brushing. He did not ask where she wanted to go. He just waited. She said, "I used to dream of teaching in Bozeman, before they pulled me out of the schoolhouse and said I was done." "Bozeman is 2 days' ride," he said. "We can make it. You are not alone anymore, Sylvie." She stared at him. "Why do you care?" He hesitated. Then he said, "Because I saw you tied like an animal, and I could not ride past." She looked at him, really looked. "You care what happens to me?" He nodded once. "Yes." That night they shared a blanket when the wind turned cold. She curled into him, his arm warm around her. He did not press, did not ask, only held her steady. And for the first time in years, she slept without fear. 2 days later, they reached Bozeman. He helped her find a place, a widow renting rooms. Sylvie walked into the schoolhouse the next morning and asked for work. They gave her a week's trial. Beau stayed in town. Said he would not leave until she was settled. She believed him. One evening she stood on the porch of her little rented room watching him walk up the road. She met him halfway. "You are still here," she said. "I will be as long as you want." She looked up at him. "Do you?" "Yes," he said. "I want." And she kissed him. Right there on the edge of a new life, she kissed him. His hand came to her cheek, gentle. When he kissed her back, it was like something inside her finally clicked into place. She pulled back just enough to whisper, "I think you changed my life." He smiled, soft and sure. "You changed mine too." The schoolhouse windows glowed with late afternoon light when Sylvie stepped outside, her skirt catching the breeze that carried the scent of pine and horsehair. Her arms ached from the long day writing sums on the blackboard, keeping order among restless boys who tested her with sidelong glances and snapped quills. But she hadn't faltered. Not once. She spotted Beau leaning against the post rail across the street, one boot braced, his hat tilted forward just enough to shade his eyes. He hadn't come near the schoolyard while class was in session. He understood, somehow without her asking, what space she needed. When she crossed to him, he straightened, brushing the dust from his shirt sleeve. "How'd the second day go?" he asked. "They tried to lock a ground squirrel in my desk drawer." He raised an eyebrow. "They didn't succeed." "You handle it." One of them sweeping the yard until he learns manners, the others writing a letter of apology. His mouth curved not quite a grin, but something close. "Sounds like they're learning already." Sylvie folded her arms, watching a freight wagon rattle past. "The headmistress said I've got a strong hand for a newcomer. Seems to me strong hands are something you've earned." She didn't answer right away. Her gaze drifted to his saddle cinched tight on the rail, bedroll still lashed behind it. The horse looked rested but ready. "You planning to leave?" His answer came slow. "Not unless you want me to." Her heart beat once hard. "I don't." He nodded, quiet again. They stood like that for a long minute, boots planted in the dirt, the town sounds drifting soft around them, hammering from the smithy, a woman calling her boy in for supper, the low clink of bottles from the saloon down the road. Finally, she said, "There's a room opening at the livery. Upstairs." "Not much, but dry and close." "Who told you that?" The stable hand. "He's a boy in my class. Said you'd be more comfortable than sleeping under your horse." Beau ran a hand along his jaw. "That's so. I told him you'd think about it." He considered. "I'll check on it tomorrow." Her hands twisted in her skirt. "There's more I need to do here than just teach. I've got to prove I belong. Folks don't forget where you came from." "They will," he said, "when they see who you are now." Sylvie wasn't sure that was true, but she wanted to believe it. She glanced toward the boarding house where she rented her room. The curtains had shifted once already this week when she and Beau had walked too close together. He seemed to follow her thoughts. "You need space. I'll keep out the way. But I'm not going anywhere if you still want me near." The words lodged in her chest. She nodded. "I do." Later, they walked the edge of town where the land dipped toward cottonwood groves and the creek curved west. She picked wild chamomile along the bank, the sun warm against her back. Beau crouched near the water, running his fingers through the current. "I used to fish creeks like this with my brother." She lowered herself beside him, the hem of her dress brushing dry grass. "What happened to him?" He didn't look up. "Died in Kansas. Fever took him before he turned 20. I'm sorry." "So was I." They sat in the hush that followed. The creek bubbled on, uncaring. A magpie flitted through the branches overhead. He said, "I didn't talk to anyone for months after, rode alone. Took jobs that didn't mean much." "Why?" "Didn't feel like I had anything left worth saying." Sylvie looked at him, and now he met her eyes. "Now I talk to you." She reached for his hand. His fingers were warm, calloused, and steady. "Thank you for staying," she said. He didn't let go. "Thank you for giving me a reason to." As dusk settled, they walked back slow, the sky painted in streaks of rose and lavender. Her hand remained in his, neither of them speaking because nothing more needed saying. By the time they reached her porch, the lamps in town had begun to glow. She turned to him, the wood creaking under her step. "Come for supper tomorrow," he nodded. "I'll bring bread, maybe pie." She smiled, soft and certain. "Then I'll cook stew." He touched the brim of his hat, then stepped back into the night. She watched until he disappeared around the corner, her hand still tingling from where it had rested in his. Behind her, the lamp inside flickered in welcome. She didn't feel alone anymore. Not in the house, not in the town, not in herself. And she knew, without anyone needing to say it out loud, that he wasn't just passing through. The stove smoked a little when Sylvie opened the door too fast, but the bread browned evenly, and the stew had thickened just right. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped back from the small table, set for two with the only matching plates she owned. The window was cracked to let out the heat, and she could hear the faint creak of saddle leather before Beau's knock came. He stood with a wrapped bundle under one arm and a bottle of vinegar cider in the other. "I didn't know what you had," he said, stepping inside after she nodded him in. "Figured something sharp might go well with stew." She took the bottle, her fingers brushing his. "That's thoughtful. I've never had cider with beef stew." He looked around the room, eyes pausing on the small bookshelf, her school papers stacked in the corner, the framed daguerreotype of her mother that sat on the mantel. "You've made it your own," he said. "I'm trying. It's quiet here, but I like that." He set the bread on the table and removed his hat, hanging it gently on the peg by the door. She poured the cider and ladled stew into bowls, and they sat opposite each other as the lamplight flickered over the wood-paneled walls. She watched him dip his bread in the stew, the way his shoulders relaxed a little as he chewed. She took a sip of cider, then leaned forward slightly. "You ever settle anywhere long?" she asked. "Not since Missouri," he said. "That's where I was raised, corn country. My folks had a patch of land, 3 milk cows and a mule with one blind eye." "Sounds like you didn't stay." "I left after the war. Couldn't stomach the quiet after all that noise. Thought I'd ride until something told me to stop." She stirred her stew, careful not to lift her eyes too fast. "And now," Beau blew on his spoon, "now I've been thinking maybe quiet ain't so bad if it's with someone who understands it." Sylvie set down her fork. "I think about the war sometimes, though I wasn't in it, just the way it changed everything. My father never talked about it, but it was in the way he looked at my brothers, like they were supposed to fix something he couldn't. He reached across the table, his hand resting near hers but not touching. "You ever want to go back to Dry Creek?" "No," she said. "Not even to look." They fell into silence, but it wasn't heavy. The kind that let thoughts stretch out between them without needing to be named. After supper, she cleared the dishes while he dried them with a frayed linen cloth. He handled the plates with care, as though he understood how few things she had left that were hers. When the last dish was put away, she walked him to the door. The air outside was cool, the sky cloudless and dark, stars sharp as pins. He lingered on the threshold. "I took that room at the livery." She looked up. "Good, that boy'll be glad to have someone watching his back up there." Beau chuckled, low and warm. "He's got more questions than a court judge. Asked me this morning if I ever killed a man. What you say?" I said yes, but not for sport. "And not without cost." Sylvie exhaled slowly. "You didn't have to be honest. That boy's got eyes like a hawk. He'd know if I lied." She stepped closer, the porch boards groaning softly beneath her boots. "You're not what I expected, Beau Bridger." "Neither are you, Miss Morgan." She placed her hand lightly against his chest, just above his heart. "You can call me Sylvie." He covered her hand with his. "All right, Sylvie." They stood that way a long moment, the sounds of town winding down around them. A train's distant whistle carried faint across the hills. She didn't want to say goodnight, not yet. "Do you know how to build fences?" she asked. He blinked. "I do. There's a pasture out back of the schoolhouse that needs mending. If you're not busy tomorrow, I'll bring my hammer." Her fingers curled slightly against his shirt. "I'll pack us lunch." He leaned forward, slow and certain, and kissed her forehead. His lips were warm against her skin, unhurried. "I'll see you in the morning," he said. She nodded, watching him disappear into the dark, his steps steady and sure. She stayed on the porch long after the door shut behind her, heart quiet but full. The next day they built a fence together. And it held. The fence had held through the hard rain that came 3 days after they built it, and the schoolmaster said so without prompting when he passed Beau in the street. Sylvie heard it from the window and didn't hide her smile. On Friday evening, Beau knocked just after dusk, his boots damp with creek water and his sleeves rolled from washing up at the pump. Sylvie was finishing a letter to a cousin in Miles City, the handwriting precise even after the long week. She set it aside and opened the door. He held a small bundle wrapped in an oilcloth. "Got something for you." She stepped back to let him in. "You didn't have to bring anything." "I didn't, but I wanted to." She unfolded the cloth on the table. Inside lay a book, its leather cover worn but cared for, titled The Prairie Reader. She ran her fingertips along the spine. "Where did you find this?" "Old rancher outside town passed last winter. Widow's been selling what she can. I traded her a cord of wood." Sylvie opened it to a page marked by a pressed fern. The print was faded but still legible. "I used this in the old schoolhouse. Before." Beau removed his hat and set it gently on the hook. Figured it might belong with someone who'd use it again. She closed the book and looked at him. "You remember everything I say, only the parts that matter." She turned back toward the shelf near the hearth and made space on the end, where the sunlight landed in the mornings. The book fit there like it had been waiting for its place. He stepped beside her but didn't speak. She said, "The school board offered me the position through winter. They said I bring steadiness." "That true?" Feels strange having someone say that after everything. "They're right," Beau said. "You've got more steadiness than most men I've ridden with." She watched his face, the way he didn't flinch from the truth, even when it was quiet. "I've been thinking," she said. "I don't want to keep you waiting on a porch forever. I'm not in a hurry, I know. But I've never had a say in what came next, not really. Until now." He waited, giving her room. "I want to build something, not just fences, a life, a home, With you." Beau looked at her like he was seeing the wind shift. "You sure? I've never been more." His hand found hers, rough and warm and certain. "Then I'll stay," he said. "Not just in town. With you." She stepped into him, her head resting just under his collarbone. His arms came around her slow, holding her like she belonged there. They stood by the hearth, shadows flickering across the floorboards. Outside, a wagon creaked past, and the town settled into the hush that came after supper. Sylvie tilted her head. "There's a patch of land behind the school, past the creek. Belongs to no one." "I thought maybe we could build there," he said. She nodded. "I know how to raise beams," he added. "And you know how to raise mines." Together they planned through the night, their voices low and steady, the fire burning down to coals. Every choice was theirs, every step forward shared. By morning the sun broke soft across the rooftops. They stood at the edge of town with the field stretched before them, the frost still clinging to the grass. Beau took her hand. Sylvie squeezed it once, then let go just long enough to start walking. He followed, boots crunching behind hers, side by side down into the place they'd make their own. The first frost clung to the grass for longer each morning, and Sylvie had started wearing her wool shawl over her shoulders when she took the path behind the school. The land they'd chosen lay quiet among the cottonwoods, the creek cutting across its north edge like a silver seam. Beau had marked the corners with wooden stakes and strung twine between them, measuring each span with a carpenter's eye. By midweek, they had flattened the ground and dug post holes, their fingers raw from working into the cold clay. "You ever think," Beau said one afternoon as he set his boot against the spade, "how strange it is to build from nothing?" Sylvie brushed hair from her brow with the back of her wrist. "It's not nothing. It's the first thing I've ever chosen for myself." He leaned on the handle, watching her. "You ever wonder what your mother would have thought?" Sylvie paused. "She'd have told me to plant lilacs near the porch. She always said they kept sorrow from settling in." Beau nodded once and picked up the spade again. On a clear Sunday, the lumber arrived by wagon from the mill outside Livingston. Sylvie paid for half with her teaching wages, and Beau covered the rest with money he'd saved from a summer driving cattle through the Gallatin Valley. The first beam went up beneath a pale sky. Sylvie held it steady while Beau hammered, his breath turning white in the air. By the end of the second week, they had raised the frame. The schoolchildren passed by after lessons, peering through the trees. One of the older girls, Carrie, called out, "Is that going to be your house, Miss Morgan?" Sylvie turned to her, smiling. "Yes, it is." Carrie tilted her head. "Will Mr. Bridger live there too?" Beau didn't answer. He was busy fitting the next board. That night, Sylvie sat on the porch of her boarding room as Beau sanded a cedar plank on the stoop. "She asked if you'd live there," Sylvie said. "I heard." "Well," he didn't look up. "You want me to?" She folded her hands in her lap. "I don't want to wake up alone anymore." "That's not just about the house." He set the plank down and stood. "Then we build it for both of us." Her voice was soft. All the way," he said. They married that November at the edge of the cottonwood grove just as the last of the leaves fell. Her dress was stitched by a neighbor who owed her a favor. The preacher came from the next town over, and the children sang a hymn they'd practiced in secret. Beau wore his cleanest shirt, the sleeves still faintly creased from the wash. He didn't write vows, but when he took her hands in his, he said, "You are the first place I ever wanted to stay." After, they shared bread and cider with the townfolk, who offered tools, blankets, and stories as gifts. That night, they lay together in the unfinished house, a fire warming the stone hearth he'd built by hand. The roof was on, the windows fitted, but the floor still smelled of raw pine. Sylvie curled beneath the quilt, her head on his shoulder, her palm resting just below his collarbone. "I didn't know a home could feel like this," she whispered. He pulled her closer, his voice low. "It's not the walls, it's you." They passed the first winter with the wind howling outside and warmth growing within. She rose early to teach, and he took jobs repairing wagons and mending tools. In the evenings, they read aloud by lamplight, their voices carrying through the rooms they had built. In spring, they planted lilacs by the front step. Years passed quiet and steady. The schoolhouse grew, and so did the house behind it, one room at a time. Beau added a root cellar. Sylvie hung herbs to dry above the stove. They never spoke of Dry Creek again. They never had to. Because each morning, when Sylvie stepped outside and saw the man who had once pulled her from a post and led her toward her own name again, each time she found his eyes in the light of day, she remembered not what she'd lost, but what she'd chosen. And Beau would kiss her forehead, just the way he had that first night, and say nothing at all. Because sometimes a quiet life is the loudest kind of love.